Welcome back, everybody. This is Charlie Stern. You're listening and watching 914 Wired. And my co-hosts are Ardina Seward and Peter Moses. I appreciate you coming back in here. Always like to remember to tell everybody, please like and subscribe, because that's how you find out when there's new episodes available. So we have something very interesting to talk about today, as we focus on politics, education, and culture, and all topics that relate to Westchester County. And our guest today is Rabbi Evan Hoffman of Congregation Anshe Sholom in New Rochelle. Welcome, Rabbi Hoffman.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, everyone.
So I'm familiar with Anshe Sholom. I did not attend that congregation, but I certainly went to a bunch of bar mitzvahs there over the years because I grew up in New Rochelle.
Which denomination of Judaism is Anshe Sholom?
It's an Orthodox synagogue.
With one specific topic in mind. So there's a election matter going on in Westchester County right now. We have George Latimer, our county executive, running for Congress against incumbent Jamaal Bowman. And something unusual is happening in that race. A lot of unusual things are happening in that story. One of which is there's a movement underway, and I'd like to know to what extent you have a connection to it. You've been quoted on the subject, but I don't know specifically your involvement. Getting Republicans to change their party registration to vote as Democrats to defeat Bowman by enabling them to vote in the Democratic primary. What do you know about this, and what are your thoughts on it?
So it's a situation that I've never encountered before, certainly not, where the nonprofit organizations in the county, Jewish nonprofit organizations, have become intensely involved politically in a way that they were not previously. But you always have members of the community who like to speak about politics and try to stir the pot, so to speak, but never before has it been that the organizations are also invested heavily in the outcome of a particular race. And at the level of individuals within synagogues, because synagogues themselves as 501c3s cannot engage in politicking, but individual members of many, many synagogues came up with an idea that the outcome of the congressional Democratic primary could be swayed considerably by the transfer party affiliation of many local Jews who might happen to be registered as independents or as Republicans. This was on my radar as early as middle of December. Mm-hmm. And then around early January, several of the Jewish organizations, including 501c4, I believe is the official term, got involved with a concerted effort to find as many Jewish communal members who are not registered as Democrats, whether they're registered as Republicans, Independents, some other affiliation, and get them to change their registration by the February 14th deadline in order to qualify for the June 25th primary. And this has been, to my knowledge, an extraordinarily successful campaign with many, many, many people that I just know anecdotally, but even beyond that, who have taken the plunge and changed their affiliation.
Right. Do you know a round number of how many have so far?
I don't know, but I can tell you that Westchester United, which is the organization which is spearheading it, and Teach NYS, which is another Jewish organization which is involved together with Westchester United, they are keeping accurate track of this data, which is publicly available, and they may have pretty precise numbers.
Do you happen to know where it's publicly available?
You can go on the state the Board of Elections website,
okay,
and put in anyone's name and their zip code, and it will tell you their affiliation.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so it's not that it's been the results of this campaign have not been aggregated, but you can always see who's registered in which party.
Those organizations that are interested in pursuing this campaign, I'm sure, are aggregating the data day by day, and they would have good information on that.
Okay, so Rabbi Hoffman, you've raised a couple of things that I want to probe a little bit further. So one is, why do this? Why do this? Because there's the high level answer, which is, we want this person to win instead of that person. But I want to get underneath this thing a little bit, because it's highly unusual to engage in a campaign to get people to change their party registration. And
I know, and you're only asking one group of people to do it. You're not asking all registered Republicans in Westchester County and the northern part of the Bronx. You're only asking Jewish Republicans to do that.
So I think that to the extent that these organizations feel that the incumbent who they want to unseat might be despised by people beyond the ethnic confines of the Jewish community, they'd be happy for those Republicans also to change their affiliation. The goal is the desired outcome on June 25th. How it is achieved and by which constituent elements of the electorate, they don't really care, but these are Jewish organizations that have the closest contact with members of the Jewish community.
What's the vertex of this issue? Israel.
It's not only Israel. It's not only Israel. Israel after October 7th is an issue. However, the incumbent congressman has been an adversarial character to the Jewish community from day one, even on domestic related matters.
Such as
Ardina.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot to cover here. So how number one, how concerned is the Jewish community about Bowman, and also has there been an attempt to be able to make him understand the implication of what he says and how it impacts the Jewish community? Has there been an attempt to have an earnest dialogue
Yes.
with them? Okay, go ahead.
That's a very good question, a very important question. That attempt was made repeatedly. And as an internal matter within the Jewish community, it's become almost to the point of making fun of people that they still try after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 episodes where Mr. Bowman has been alerted to the fact that his actions, his statements are, repugnant in our eyes and threatening to us, and it's clear that he doesn't care. Sometimes in politics, people do what they want to do, and what they want to do is to do something which is against someone else's interests. It's clear that he will not be swayed by pleasant conversation and an attempt to engage in high-level dialogue. I don't think he's capable of high-level dialogue, to be honest, and he's failed because he wants to fail.
I think it depends on what high-level dialogue. I mean, with the Jewish community, we had Justin Brash on election night, and and I'm sure you know Justin.
Sure, yeah.
And Justin explained to us his attempts at creating dialogue with Bowman. You can say his name, by the way, instead of just the incumbent Congress member. He has a name, Jamaal Bowman. And what you're saying, he had already expressed to us. Mm-hmm. Ardina, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Rabbi, in your opinion, how much of his stance on the Jewish community do you think is just sort of endemic to him, or is it he trying to appease his progressive element?
So that's also a good question, and among the rabbis of the county, we were asking ourselves that question for a long time. I'd say in 2021, 2022, we wondered to ourselves, is he looking to make himself impressive in the eyes of the Democrat socialists, or is this who he is? And he holds a seat in Congress, and he's entitled to the bully pulpit and have his voice heard. And this is what he really believes. This is how he really feels. I've come to the conclusion this is how he feels. The man is entitled to have opinions that I think are abhorrent.
Go ahead.
Here's another issue, and Charlie, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to take up your time here.
Go ahead.
But I mean, I'm a post-Auschwitz Jew. I'm the child of a survivor, and grandchild of survivors. Um, these are very important things to me as a Jew and as a New Yorker. The problem I have with some of what's going on with these Jewish groups is after June 25th, after November, these efforts might result in more division among blacks and Jews in Westchester, the Bronx, and it could resonate to other parts of the communities that are around Westchester. And are you at all concerned that because Bowman does speak to communities who elected him by a big, wide margin, he beat Elliot Engel badly, and he
Yeah.
won re-election in large numbers. Are you not at all concerned that you're going to create bigger problems between Jews and blacks than already exist? We were talking about that issue before you came on. We were just chatting.
So that is a concern that is spoken about among high-level leadership of the laity of Westchester Jewry. Yeah, the rabbinate also, but the laymen in particular. And the consensus basically is that relations, for the most part, are good, absent the Bowman issue. And if he no longer holds a seat in Congress and essentially disappears from the public landscape, then the good working relations can continue without this nuisance factor.
Yeah, but I would say that Peter, I think what has happened, that a lot of it isn't a groundswell of support for it is a groundswell of support for women, is being buoyed by Jewish uber progressives. So the question to the
That's true
rabbi,
too. Yeah.
so the question to the rabbi is, are you trying to rein in the progressives and get them back to center from their uber left position and say, look,
That's a big challenge. That's a big challenge, and I would say it may be impossible to do. I, as an Orthodox rabbi, don't encounter this all that much because my constituency in the Orthodox synagogues, we don't find too many such Jews with those kinds of political opinions. In the non-Orthodox synagogues, especially in the Reform synagogues, I feel badly for my Reform colleagues because they may have members of their congregation who are staunch supporters of Jamaal Bowman or other political figures whom the rest of the congregation finds to be anathema. And then what do you do? How do you try to avoid division and rancor in the congregation? It's not an easy thing, and I'm not sure it can be avoided. All I can say is at the macro level, the Jewish community in America has to struggle with the issue of whose opinions are beyond the pale. In other words, despite the fact that they may be Jews themselves and participate in Jewish civic life, when is their viewpoint so out of the mainstream that they become persona non grata, so to speak? And that's a very serious question that we will grapple with this year and in years to come.
well,
I'd like to know specifically what toppled things, because I've been to lots of synagogues and temples and various levels of Jewish depth and different congregations, and there certainly is a social layer to what is talked about in those places, but they're typically not like politically active in this way that's going on right now. So I would like to know, Rabbi, what kicked this over? What kicked the can on its side?
Some would say that the current Israel-Hamas war did that. I would say that that's not true. The extent to which there was a desire to oust Jamaal Bowman from his seat was present well before that. I would say a good year before that. So it's just repeated statements that the community, or a large swath of the community, found to be just unacceptable and out of character for what we're accustomed to. We had Elliot Engel, our congressman, for 30 years. We were accustomed to having someone whose opinions on domestic and foreign policy issues were aligned with roughly what we believe in.
But you know what that sounds like to me? That sounds like you want things to go back to the good old days, to the way that they were. And not only is that not likely to happen, I think it's impossible now, because there's this conflict in the Middle East that is brutal, ongoing, and you don't have to be a supporter of Jamaal Bowman to believe that there's a significant cleavage, even within the Jewish community, over what's going on. And that this, look, you read the same newspapers that I do, and the reports are 25 or 27,000 Palestinians have been killed. There were 360 hostages approximately, or combined killed and hostage, 360 approximately. You know, the world's sympathy for this situation is not going to last indefinitely, and that could impact the efficacy of this political activism. What do you say to that?
If it does, it does. But those of us who care strongly are going to try to make sure that it doesn't.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on Charlie's question, Rabbi. Exactly what Charlie's saying. Does this split, this difference of opinion in the Jewish community, portend a permanent schism between the new emergent left-wing activist Jews and the traditional Jews who are older and who vote Democratic and who have basically been political activists, but not in the scale that we're seeing? In other words, is there now going to be a permanent divide, and are we going to see a stronger Jewish left-wing movement as older Jews get older?
I would say it's going to exist, but it will always be a fringe phenomenon. And it will be a fringe phenomenon that is held in disdain by the rest of the Jewish community.
What implications, if any, does this have for the upcoming national election? I mean, is this going to be the same advocacy?
No, because you have to bear in mind that America is a divided country, right and left, with people holding very polar opposite opinions, sometimes absurd opinions. We live in a post-truth era, a lot of nonsense out there. Everybody has their own mishigas, as we would say in Yiddish. And there are Jews on both sides of that fence. And nothing's going to change that. But as for a local race where the office holder right now is seen so negatively by the vast majority of the Jewish community, so that's where there can be common action. But that common action is restricted to this specific race. It is not something that will carry forward at the national level at all.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
The fact is, you don't know whether this might end up creating a groundswell of Jewish activism beyond our district, of Jews for getting together. I mean, AIPAC exists for a reason, right? And some of these other Jewish advocacy groups exist for a reason. This could be replicated somewhere else. I mean, this could theoretically be replicated in Michigan, where you have the two Muslim women who are part of.
But I'll tell you why it won't be replicated there. I'll tell you why not. These are very different scenarios, very, very different. Westchester, there's no logical reason why our congressional district has to have someone who occupies the seat who is so adversarial. I understand why in Michigan, in a district which is predominantly Muslim or Arab American, people are going to have sentiments there that are not friendly towards our kind and towards Israel. And I expect that whoever wins those congressional races will have views along the lines of the views held by those who currently occupy those seats.
Well, Rabbi, some would say there's a reason. And the reason is because he got elected twice. Right?
Yes,
Elliot Engel lost an election, and he was using this calculus, AIPAC money, and a certain certainty that people wanted his 18th term in Congress.
The
Okay, so
reason,
Charlie,
yeah, the
what
reason,
The world has shifted. The world
what
shifted a
you're
little
saying,
bit.
but what you're saying is that yes, this effort may fail. I was responding to Peter's comment about could it be replicated elsewhere, and the answer is no. It's not going to be replicated elsewhere for logical reasons. It's illogical for it to be elsewhere. It is somewhat logical for it to be here. If it fails, it fails, but it's logical to attempt it.
And why is it logical here? Because
Because New York 16 doesn't have to have a virulently anti-Semitic congressman. This is not, demographically, it doesn't call for one. I mean, I hate to be blunt about it, but America is a melting pot, maybe, but America is a heterogeneous place, and everybody has their baggage, ethnic, religious, and otherwise. And I understand why certain districts are going to elect people who don't like me. But why should my district, given its current makeup, be that district? It doesn't have to be, and I'm hoping it's not.
Rabbi Hoffman, I appreciate you being blunt about it, and that's why that makes for a good guest on 914
Right.
Wired. So thank you. What I would say in rebuttal is, are the demographics of the district reflected in the Democratic primary? That's what we're going to find out.
Listen, the Democratic primary is usually a very low turnout affair, which maybe not indicative of anything really, other than who happened to show up in an off year at an off time. This year will be different because of all the scuttlebutt and the excitement. So we'll learn more about the district this time than ever before.
I wonder what's going to happen with the special election this month on the Queens Nassau side between a black Israeli
The
woman.
Mazi Swazi affair, yes.
Yeah,
Mazi Swazi.
My
and
parents
how
live a
how
block
that's-
away from Mazi.
and how that's going to pan out, because that may be indicative of that may be indicative of a lot of different things, and we'll see if it resonates anywhere beyond that district.
It has some parallels to the 16th district, but not all that much. I mean, the idea that Latimer is the Jewish candidate and that Mazi Pilip is the Jewish candidate, it doesn't really work because Bowman is the sort of the figure who is reviled and who the community wants to oust. Tom Swazi is just a nice Democratic congressman. If you don't like Democrats, you don't like him. But nobody really hates his guts.
Well, I hear you, but I think there's a parallel between Swazi and Latimer because they're both popular county executives, and they're both basically centrists.
Yeah.
And from a certain distance, what this race looks like to me is centricism versus the far left.
That's
And I think
why, Charlie. That's why I brought this up.
And ultimately, what we have here is a race of the far left versus centricism that a lot of people are interested in because it's been turned into a referendum on Israel. I don't see how that's avoidable. I think that's incontrovertible. We're talking. George Latimer has raised 60% of the money he's got so far from one contributor, and it's AIPAC.
Yeah.
Not a new player in politics. Hakeem Jeffries takes money from AIPAC. Grace Meng takes money from AIPAC. Latimer told us on this program, half the Congressional Black Caucus is taking money from AIPAC, including a bunch of people and Congress members in our immediate area. So it's not a new story. There probably would be no Elliot Engel if it weren't for AIPAC. But the world shifted a little bit, and it swung left a little bit. And you have a popular movement called Justice Democrats now, and it's picked up steam, and the center has hollowed out a little bit. And I don't know if the world is exactly going to go back to the way it was. So, Rabbi, it's an interesting thing that you're in the midst of, where asking Republicans and independents to change their party registration in significant numbers, that's really something, and
That's new.
we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see how it works. I don't know.
That's radical.
Is it new? I don't know. Was it? Are there parallels between this and when Jewish people crossed party lines in unprecedented numbers to vote for Rudy Giuliani. Was that different than this? Arguably, it's a little different because that wasn't a primary. But on some level, there are parallels. And what it comes back to is a broken alliance between blacks and Jews. It existed. We all know it existed. For Rabbi Hoffman and I, it's kind of before our day, but we know about it.
It still exists. It exists in Westchester at the level of the clergy. This may be something that is unknown to just political talkers, but in the realm of the rabbis and the ministers, the relations between the rabbis and the black church have never been better in Westchester County, largely because of the efforts of the Westchester Jewish Council and UJA to run joint missions to Israel, to Alabama. We travel together, we learn together, and this is all in the last 2 or 3 years. I have good friends among the black clergy in Westchester County, and I am very happy about that. We've done a lot of constructive things for both of our communities, courtesy of this alliance. And we have not allowed any political differences or political candidates and public figures to get in the way of that cooperation. And I'm hoping that whatever happens in the Latimer Bowman race, including if Latimer wins and Bowman is gone, that it remains the same. And I think it will.
By the way, the idea of Bowman being gone if he loses, George is getting up there in years. Even if George lasts 3 terms,
Yeah.
Bowman is still a young man. He's not going anywhere. He may not be in Congress, but he's going to be around, and he's going to be someone that we all are going to have to deal with on some level at some point, whether we like it or not. He is a political force, and the idea that this one election, even if George wins, is going to blunt Bowman's what's the word I'm
Trajectory.
looking for?
His trajectory, his future.
His future.
Well, I think the way to blunt it is, aside from this particular election outcome, is for those who don't like him to emphasize his erratic behavior and his bizarre theories about things, that he's a 9/11 truther, the fire alarm episode, his pro-Hamas statements. I mean, there's a wide range of things, and there's also some of his personal background that got covered up. There's a wide range of things about what he has said and what he has done that renders him not a reputable public figure, putting aside even Jewish-related matters. Taking my rabbi hat off for a second and just looking at it from a standpoint of a resident of this county, he doesn't bring any honor and glory to his office or to our area. And to the extent that that can be made clear in a campaign against him, then maybe he doesn't have much of a future.
Well, I know we're getting close to the end of the show, Charlie. So I will be brief. I promise. The whole redistricting thing is really throwing a wrench into the primary.
all of it.
All of it. So what's going to happen? A very, very simple question. If it shifts to Latimer, will your campaign remain the same? Tell us.
Well, George has admitted publicly that if much of the Bronx is included in the district, he doesn't expect to win.
Exactly.
I applaud him for being that blunt and that honest about it.
But then will you double down your efforts?
So if the answer is the efforts will remain in place, regardless of where the boundaries are drawn. The only difference is the geographic focus shifts. Those communities that are now outside the district, goodbye, it was nice knowing you, and those that are included, we can find some friends, we'll find some friends.
Rabbi Evan Hoffman, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And to use your words, and being blunt about it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I think we gain enlightenment and a better understanding of what we're talking about. So thank you again for being our gracious guest on 914 Wired. So, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio. I believe it's on Amazon Music now. So there's a lot of different places where you can listen to 914 Wired, Peter. You got to go there and follow them all. Follow, like, subscribe, and we'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.